Hi, how's it going?
Hey, hey, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, cool. So I'm here with Randy. We tried to create an account for him, but we had some technical issues where it wouldn't create the account.
Elon Musk is on to me. He's keeping me off of his platform. He
Aha.
knows he knows I'm trouble.
Well,
so, so I think we're gonna just have to do it live.
sounds great. It's kind of like old school and new school at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Um, so you can hear Randy, okay?
Yeah, test, test, test. Can you hear me?
Yep.
That's good enough. Okay.
Okay, okay, great. All right, so I guess we'll just start, and we'll worry about the accounts later. Um, so, Randy, can you tell us a little bit about how you first started as an actor?
Well, I started as an actor because I completely flunked out of school one semester, and all of my previous plans were in the trash. So when I went back to school to make sure I wasn't drafted into the Vietnam War, I I got into I took some theater classes, and that was the beginning. Um, I had no particular ambition to be an actor, but at that point, I had done a couple of musicals in high school and enjoyed that. Um, but as far as acting, I had no notion that that was a career path. And but once I got into the theater department, it went from there. And uh, uh, I let's see, how the best way. Um, I started acting. I mean, I started auditioning and acting for shows at the school at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And I was in the first acting class that we had at that college. And this is this would have been 1969. Um, so the whole cultural revolution was, you might say, as they call it, was in full swing, and people were fleeing into the arts, and I was one of those. So anyway, there was one play I would say that was the turning point. I got cast. One of the major productions the school put on was Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, and I was cast as Rosencrantz, which is a lovely part and a very perfect part for me at that age. And given my lack of any training, you just have to be fairly intelligent and be able to talk quickly, and that seemed to do the job.
That's awesome.
So that's how that began. That's how it began, and then I mean I could, there's more to tell, however you want to go.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And uh, how did you get into? Because obviously, Star Trek is a massively, massively popular show. What was the initial? Did you get an audition or?
Well, yeah, I mean I as um, I went to acting school in San Francisco at the American Conservatory Theater. I did 7 years there, 3 in the school, and well, 8 years, 5 in the company, and then I moved to LA in 1982. And I had an agent because at that time agents would come to see our work in San Francisco at the Geary Theater. It was a very big, 1,500 seat house, lovely, legitimate theater, great gig, and agents would come from LA and see our work. So I had an agent when I got to LA, which is a beautiful thing, and I started getting submitted. Um, Star Trek is interesting. The casting director's office was Junie Lowry Johnson's office, and I worked. Junie called me in a lot. I did many shows that she cast in the '80s, and one of her assistants, a lovely fellow named Ron Surma, was casting all of the Star Trek. And they called me in for one, and I think that was Next Generation, and I got a part in a guest star in that, and that was the beginning. And Ron cast that show for many years after that. I don't think he cast Enterprise, but he was casting Next Generation, Deep Space Voyager. Um, uh, let's see, Next Generation, Deep Space Voyager, Enterprise. I'm not sure if he was casting. Anyway, Ron would call Ron liked to call theater actors in because the language of Star Trek can be a little tricky, a little artificial, and he had found that theater actors often could handle the language better. So that kind of gave all, and many of my friends who had come from theater all ultimately auditioned, and many performed in Star Trek. So that was how that began. And of course, since you're wearing a lot of latex, mostly, although the first part I did on Next Generation, I was in normal, makeup. I was just a humanoid with no particular plastic additions to my my physiognomy, and uh, so that was how that began, and Ron, because because of makeup, he could cast you year in, you could do several different parts in one season if the makeup was right. So that's how I ended up, being able to work so much on all those shows. I mean, I ended up doing two Deep Space, so um, I performed in that season twice. Uh,
Yeah, let's talk about about your first character, because you did 7 characters, which is a lot. So what was the first character that you did?
the
That was
the first character there was that the episode that I did with that character in Next Generation was. Uh, the show was built around a very well-known deaf actor at that time. I can't remember his name, but he was cast as this species or uh, being who couldn't talk. So he had 3 figures that represented him. There was a woman and an intellectual and a very handsome fellow, sort of. So we were the three. We were his mouthpieces, and depending on what the situation was, one of us would do the talking for him, and that was the gimmick, I suppose. And that's so I was the intellectual, and I do have a photo from that show. I wore this little white beret. It was very silly, and I do enjoy seeing it and realizing how very silly it was.
oh gosh, but that was part of the
It
costume,
was
wasn't
part of
it?
the costume. Yeah, it was the character. I was sort of I guess if you're an intellectual, they think you've got to be French.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Why couldn't you be British?
Well,
It could
yeah,
be a deer stalker.
British are normally the bad guys, though, aren't they? That's what they normally do.
I guess the French philosopher image, I was
Right.
a young Voltaire. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. And then the second character that you played.
Well, the next character I played, well, the next season would have been Deep Space, and I actually did 3 characters in Deep Space, but I get to count, but one of them was twins, so that counts as 2. I played Akel and Rokel
Oh no, that's a fun
in
job.
yeah, and at that time, Jeremy Irons was doing a movie in which he played twins.
Huh.
So I got to explore this whole uh, process of playing twins, which was really fascinating because there were scenes where I would have to make an entrance into the Star Trek bar, and they would put a blue screen behind me, and I would have to do it on one side as one character, and then move over and to the other side and do it as the other character, and I would have to remember what I was doing each side, uh, and pretend to be talking to myself on the other side. So it was a fascinating process, and that was, I'm not sure if that was the first character, but the other character I did in Deep Space was a character named Silaran Prin.
It's a cool name.
He had been involved in some sort of rebel action, and he was a butler at a very wealthy house. He was a Kardashian, so in a Kardashian household, a bomb was planted. The entire household was blown up. He was badly disfigured, and he's got a real chip on his shoulder, and he's living on an asteroid somewhere.
Huh.
And Nana Visitor, whose character I can't remember, but the actress Nana Visitor played this character who was pregnant at the time. Well, the storyline was that I managed to kidnap her and get her on my asteroid. And I'm going to remove the child and kill her and raise the child. So this was my revenge on on her people who had been involved in the the whole revolutionary whatever was going on. And that was so that was I was only in the last 15 minutes of the show when you finally find her with me on the asteroid, and it was one of the scene was just the two of us for the last 15 minutes, and the master shot that we did was about 10 minutes long. It was one of the
Gosh.
longest masters I've ever done. It was like doing a little playlet, really.
Yeah,
It was great
that's
fun.
tough.
And I actually have a laser, and I get as far as I'm just about to anyway operate. And anyway, I'm thwarted and I'm killed, and it ended all well for her, but very badly for me.
Oh dear. And
Yeah.
that was the end of character 2, was it? Or was this
Well, that would have been or character 3 if you count the twins twice.
Oh right,
I count the
we
twins
should.
twice. I
Yeah.
think that's fair.
We should. They are separate people.
And then there was a character in Voyager which I don't remember particularly well because it was the least interesting of the ones I did. And then I did 2 characters in Enterprise. So that would have been 3, 4. I don't. Does that make 7? I don't know.
I think. Yeah, I might have to
Let's
work
see.
on. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
4, 5, 6. That's 6. I don't know where they came up with 7.
No, I thought it's 6. We should check your residuals. If you might be rich.
Did I do a show that I forgot? I mean, I was doing these shows from for like over about 15 years. So the whole span of the those different seasons went for many years.
And which was the one I saw you where you had like makeup and like a, I think I saw your face and it had like sort of you had some latex on that one.
I mean, the twins had a little bit of latex on the neck and a big brow, a forehead. The one with the most extensive makeup was the character Sillerin Prin, the Kardashian who'd been blown up in an explosion, and I was in the makeup chair for 5 hours.
5 hours.
Putting that on, and about 4 hours getting it off.
Oh my gosh.
I think by the end we were able to get it off in 3. But
that's a lot.
Yeah, it was a huge week's work. Yeah, it was a lot of overtime on that one.
Yeah, and how does that work? It doesn't leave you much time for the acting by the time if you add 5 and 9.
Well, they bring you in at some ungodly hour in the morning, and then you're in the chair, and then you work all day, and then you're in the chair again, and then you go home. And sometimes, they have to bring you back without giving you the turnaround, which is 12 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get a nice big fat bonus for coming back early.
Was it tempting just to sleep in it? I'm just gonna go.
Well, I will say the last character I did on Enterprise, I had an episode with Scott Bakula. It was just Scott and I in the entire episode in a space pod, his space pod. So it was just the two of us all week, and we were working so much that they actually they picked me up and brought me home.
Oh, did they?
They picked me up in the morning from home and brought me back at night so that I didn't have to be driving. And I made a huge paycheck on that one.
Oh, that's really nice that they did that.
Yeah. It was, I will say this, just in general, Star Trek, I don't think I've worked with any better crews or the directors, the crews, they were great. And they worked really hard. They worked really well together. And when you were on that show, you really had a feel that it was all a great big ensemble, all working toward the same end. It was the best, kind of one of the better TV experiences I've had in all around. And in that last season where I played. I'm trying to remember the character's name now. Degra. I was Degra in I was one of the Zindi humanoid Zindi, and I had a storyline with one of my fellow actors who was the Zindi had several types of Zindi. There were humanoids, there were the reptilians, there were fish, and there were sloth-like creatures who lived up in the in the art in the trees. And I had a real problem with one of my fellow Zindi who was a reptilian. And as the storyline progresses, you realize we're very much at odds to the point where in the end he kills me. And this was over about 10 or 11 episodes that was the arc of the story. And by the last scene that I had was the scene where this fellow kills me. And all the crew had been watching our storyline progress through the weeks as we shot the season. And when we got to that scene, we were in a room which would have been my character's office, and it was full of crew members because
Oh,
they wanted to
nice.
see the death scene. So it became a theatrical event. Which, if I started in theater. I love theater. That was my native ground, and for a theater actor, it was a lot of fun. And sidebar, the fellow who killed me, who played the reptilian, I was on Broadway with in a show that we did at the Mark Taper Forum, which won a Pulitzer Prize. It was the first show to ever win a Pulitzer with a production without a New York production.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
we went to Broadway with it, and so he and I were on Broadway together, and we ended up doing this Star Trek together. So it was one of those marvelous kind of convergences of past and present, that made it very rich. And but the crew that they were, it was such a great crew. They were all good, lovely, and the makeup people. Michael Westmore was in charge of the makeup, and the Westmore family is a very, very legendary Hollywood makeup family. And Michael was terrific, and all the people he had doing that work, because it was hard work. I mean, they worked very hard.
Yeah,
They
5
were
hours.
casting, and so Star Trek was a really, really, really good gig in many, many ways.
And so when you said, just going back to when you said that you had a 10-minute scene, I mean, you obviously knew how long that was going to be, but did they say that they were going to keep going, or did you?
Well, you do a master.
Hmm.
You just do the master shot, and you run the whole scene, and they shoot it from somewhere where they're able to take it all in, and then you break it down into the different parts where you cover this or cover that, cover her, cover me, whatever, however they want to break it down, close ups, two shots, however they want to break it down, so they can then, the editor will reassemble it down the road. But you in those days anyway, you would do a master, so you would run the scene from beginning to end, and that was yeah, and so that's how that came about.
That's really cool. And you and I worked together on Game of Faces, where you did a very good British accent. For Star Trek, did you change your accent for any of those characters, or were they all?
No, although for Sillerin Prim, the guy who had been blown up in the explosion, his face was badly disfigured, and so I talked as though my teeth had been changed. So I talked sort of like this. So it was a very different sound coming from me.
Oh, that's really clever.
Yes, he had been damaged, and very angry man.
That's awesome.
So but that was, it was a logical choice based on
Yeah,
what had happened to him.
on
So I was
circumstance.
able to change my. Many years previously, I had done Romeo and Juliet at the American Conservatory Theater, and I played the nurse's man Peter, he's a peasant, and I had seen a paint. The wardrobe in for this production of Romeo and Juliet was based on very early or early Renaissance, which would have been Peter Bruegel, and we looked at a lot of Bruegel paintings. And I found this painting of a peasant. It was actually a blow up of a face, and he had buck teeth. And so I had my dentist make some teeth for me. So Peter was anyway. Peter had buck teeth, and I used them. I didn't even put them in until the first dress rehearsal. I didn't tell the director, and he didn't tell me not to do it. So I used them for the rest of the play.
That's interesting. And actually going to the directors on Star Trek, I know on TV it's very different to film. They have a different director normally for every episode.
Yeah,
Was that the case? You had
yeah,
somebody.
yeah. Different. I mean, sometimes over seasons you would maybe bump into another director. I mean, a director that you'd worked with before. But Lydia was always interesting. I mean, they were all wonderful directors. They knew what they wanted. They knew the gig. They knew Star Trek. They knew the world of the production and the world of the show. So they kind of, they were all good. They were all very, very experienced um, in the world of Star Trek.
That's really cool. And I think Emily has a question. Do you have a question, Emily? I think he was saying you wanted to ask about. Um,
Yeah, Randy, this is so fascinating. It's so interesting. Watching Star Trek for so many years and then actually getting to talk to you is really, it's just incredible to hear the flip side of it.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm wondering, like, you've been in all of these worlds, you've acted as all these aliens. I'm
Uh-huh.
curious your personal opinion on, humanity as a multi, cosmic species, and, maybe what your view is on, where we are with aliens right now. And yeah, I'm
Well,
curious what your personal beliefs are.
I'm a pretty earthbound guy. I'm kind of pedestrian when it comes to 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 outer space. Uh,
Oh, how interesting.
yeah, but that's an interesting question, and I've never really thought about it. I mean, I just looked at it as another. It was another part to play with different makeup, and the situations are situations we all recognize. Um, Although, for instance, in Enterprise, um, uh, I was playing a scientist who had built a bomb and blown up Florida,
oh gosh,
which
that's
sometimes
dramatic.
you might think that may not be the worst thing to happen, but I'm kidding.
I
No,
like
no
Floridians.
offense, Floridians. No, but the stakes are very high. I mean that's what was interesting about doing the show. I mean these are stakes where entire worlds are at risk, and if if you have a turn of mind that sort of translates that into where we're at, well, it could be pretty unnerving, I suppose. But I don't particularly. My brother is very much into the possibility of aliens, and
Mhm.
perhaps they've been here. And I don't know what to do with that information.
Hmm. Interesting.
That's
Yeah.
so fair. I mean, you actually acted it out, as if we were already experiencing aliens or experiencing this galactic presence, and
Uh,
yet, and yet it's still very human and still very relational based. So it
yeah,
actually kind of gives me some interesting insight. Like, if there are aliens out there, maybe it's just the same as me talking to you right now.
I don't know. The closest thing the whole AI thing right now, and I've been reading a lot about AI. I was reading a thing today written by a writer who has developed a relationship with uh, Chat GPT,
Yeah, GPT.
and that's almost like an alien situation. I mean, it's very strange, and we tend to project our humanity onto that, but it's just a machine.
Mm.
That's what's so strange to me about Chat GPT. A friend of mine uses it, and he showed me, he did a conversation with it, and it's weird and wild, and I think I think humans, we're very prone to being somewhat gullible, and it's easy to forget this is a machine, and you just have to unplug it.
That's a good take, actually. When you say gullible, do you mean like naive?
Well, I think we recognize certain, it has a voice, it has a temperament, and a very, very lovely temperament. So it's very, very easy to be seduced by it. I mean, for some people, literally, in a, at the odder extremes of the experience. Um, so I don't know. It's a weird place we're going. Really, this person was also a teacher, and she was talking a lot about how students are using AI to write essays, and what is this going to do to our mind? Anyway, we're off the subject of aliens, but to me, there's something very alien about about the AI experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a new world.
It's a new world thing that's happening right now that doesn't require that doesn't depend on outer space. I suppose when I say I'm, I guess I really am a little earthbound. I think what's happening here, I don't understand why anybody would want to go to Mars. I think the planet we live on is a beautiful, interesting, infinitely fascinating place, and certainly satisfies all of my curiosity in that way.
And is Star Trek the only show that you'd worked on that was sci-fi, or?
I did X-Files.
Oh, nice.
I did X-Files was I have a theory that X-Files was the first show that began to sort of um, loosen our imagination, and I think a certain kind of conspiratorial mind tendency started with X-Files because it was exploring all these different possibilities of what could happen on Earth and what could be happening on Earth. And it was, I think that was one of the first. I mean, you could go all the way back to, Rod Serling and, some of the really early shows. But for the current kind of mentality, I think X Files was kind of influential.
Yeah, definitely. That was a massive show as well. Like it went for
Massive.
ages.
Yeah, it went forever.